Welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast. And now, your host, Dustin Jones.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Senior Rehab Podcast. Today, I have a very, very special friend that is the guest. Her name is Peanie Smith. She is actually a former patient of mine. I treated her and her husband. Her husband recently passed away. He was in his early 90s, and Peanie is 92. She is a sweetheart, and she's sharp as a tack, and just an amazing woman that has had an amazing life and is continuing to do so. And I wanted to bring her on just so she could share her story, her perspective, and so you all can just really just listen to a patient and just get an idea of what it's like from the patient perspective and then also the caregiver perspective. She's a sweetheart. You'll really enjoy her. Her voice will sound very familiar because she's actually the person that's been doing the intro to the podcast. So without further ado, my good friend, Peanie Smith. Okay.
Someone told me if you put orange juice in, that would be better, but...
With wine?
Yeah.
Really?
No, I didn't try it. And
Yeah.
I tasted it, and I thought it was terrible.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cheap red wine. Have you had lots of other red wines?
No.
No.
Well, the sisters got it for us for Christmas last year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I like a good cheap red wine.
I don't know enough about it, whether it's cheap or expensive.
All right. Peanie Smith. Tell me about yourself. Give me a little background on where you're from, when you met Walt, and just a little summary of your life with him.
Okay, this is Peanie Smith. I'm 92 years old. I was born in Lancaster, Ohio. I was one of 7 children. Lived on a farm.
What kind of farm?
All purpose.
Yeah.
Grain and cows, pigs, chickens.
So a little bit of everything?
Just a little bit of everything.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And moved to Columbus after I graduated from high school from Amanda. Went to work at the telephone company and the Farm Bureau.
Nice.
And married Walter Smith September 3rd, 1960.
And we'll mention before Walter.
I was married before, and my husband died of a heart attack at 47 years of age. Left me with 2 wonderful children, Jeff and Jeannie. And then I met a nice man that lived down the street from me named Walter Smith. The love of my life.
Yeah, quite the gentleman.
And he was a gentle gentleman.
Yeah.
And just a wonderful, wonderful father to my 2 children.
Yeah.
And they thought the world and all of him.
Yeah.
And we had a wonderful life together, did a lot of traveling, lots of traveling. And he was a maintenance supervisor at General Motors for 32 years. Could fix anything. Anything.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's why I miss him now, because he could fix everything.
I'm no good. I can't fix anything for you.
Yeah, well,
I apologize.
Well, I'm going to have to get me a new boyfriend then. And let's see. Well, he loved to fly, and he had his little J3 Cub that we had a lot of fun in.
Yep.
And he was a good golfer, good bowler, just a good man all the way around.
Yeah. And he also served in the war, correct?
He was a World War II veteran. He was a paratrooper and was in the Battle of the Bulge. And they dropped in southern France and had a rough time. Mm-hmm. But he was very fortunate. He got the Purple Heart, but very fortunate he got to come home.
Yeah. Quite the story, but everyone that knows you all knows that the only reason he's worth anything is because he married you.
Oh, they're all wrong. No, they got that backwards. The only reason I married him was because of him.
So I know you all because, I was Walt's home health physical therapist.
Yes.
And I was your physical therapist as well for a little bit.
Yes.
So tell us about your experiences just getting care, especially toward the end of Walt's life. What were some of the best aspects of the healthcare system that you experienced, especially, going through what Walt went through?
Well, I think the first real serious problem was when he didn't fall on the steps, but he twisted his knee and pulled tendons from his kneecap, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And had surgery on that, and it was a real serious surgery, which wasn't, like the surgeon said, he would never use that leg normally again, which he didn't.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a lot of pain, but his legs got weaker and weaker.
Yeah.
And he was in therapy for quite some time, 2 months, in fact, down at Westminster.
Yeah.
And he came home and tried to do things that he was always used to doing, and as time went on, it got more difficult for him.
Yeah.
And we got a wonderful physical therapist for him, and I believe his name was Dustin Jones. and he also helped me with my balance, too. And Walt did real well with him, and he always looked forward to him coming to, even though he put him down on the floor and made him work.
We did what we did was probably more similar to his boot camp training back in the war than anything. So what were some of the worst experiences you had in the healthcare system in terms of not the injuries themselves or any disease processes that you all experienced, but just in terms of the service or things that were just really difficult or frustrating for you?
Well, I can honestly say that we were very fortunate that we didn't run into any big problems, really.
Yeah.
Our biggest problem was to get, after our physical therapist was here, to do it when he was gone.
Yeah. That's always the tough part.
Yeah. We did some, but we wasn't true to Dustin.
Yeah, it's okay. We tried to play some country music and
and we danced,
make some fun out of it. But
and he had Walter pushing me as a oak tree.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
And Walt enjoyed that too.
Yeah.
Pushing me around. With Dustin up my back to catch me.
Yep. I was always there. So at that point, when we were working together, Walt had Alzheimer's and it was progressing, somewhat quickly.
Yes.
What is that like to live with someone that has Alzheimer's disease?
It's the most heartbreaking thing that I ever had to experience. Because he was such an intelligent man, and to see him deteriorate the way he did, and especially in the evening, what they referred to as sundown syndrome. He was a different man altogether.
So how would you explain sundown syndrome?
He would be a completely different man. He couldn't remember anything, and he didn't think he lived in this house that we had been here since 1960.
Yeah.
And he would want to leave, go down the street, and find some place to sleep that night. And I'd explain to him that this was his home, and he'd be sleeping with me, and he couldn't understand that. He still had to try to get out and go find a place to sleep.
Yeah.
And that was a toughie.
Yeah. What were some helpful resources for you in that time? I know I was coming for physical therapy.
Well, we had a very nice girl to come at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And she would stay until 10. She would just entertain Walt so that I could be by myself and get a little bit done.
Yeah.
And she was a godsend. She really understood him, and she had enough experience with Alzheimer's that, and she was good for me too, because she would tell me to enjoy today because tomorrow would be worse, and things would get worse, and it did.
Yeah.
But without Amber, I probably couldn't have kept him home as long as I did.
Yeah.
Because he would insist on going out, and I wasn't able to hold him.
Yeah.
And he wasn't nasty.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't nasty at any time with me. He was nasty with himself and frustrated with himself that he couldn't do what he wanted to.
Yeah.
But Amber could settle him down, and she would put him to bed, and she'd say, Peanie, he's asleep now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Amber wasn't out of the driveway until he was up. And he was up an awful lot during the night, up and down, and he had this paper fetish that sometimes he would use a full roll of toilet paper in a day's time.
Yeah.
It was more to tear in little pieces and just something to do with paper.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you try and communicate with him when he would be confused? What kind of tactics did you use to?
Well, I was advised to don't disagree with him,
mm-hmm.
just agree with what he was saying, because he couldn't remember anything that if I tried to correct him.
Yeah.
He couldn't remember, and he didn't care for that. So I was advised just to go along with his thinking.
That's good marriage advice.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. So you kind of just go along with it and don't confront his reality.
No, just agree with him.
Yeah.
And I have friends now. I have 3 friends with their husbands are going through the same thing that Walt did.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to tell them, just be patient.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of patience.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to understand that man could change so drastically in that shorter time.
Yeah. Yeah. How big of a relief were the door alarms that you had in your house? Was that helpful to ease any worry at night?
Yes, it was, because I knew I would hear if he tried to get out, which he never tried to get out at night.
Yeah.
Was thankful for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the alarms, well, I still have them now.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I'd say the alarm made me feel safer.
Yeah.
That he wasn't, if he did try to get out, I would hear him.
Yeah. Tell us about your church family, because I know they were, amazing during that time and still are. Could you tell us about, kind of what they did for you?
Well, it started in, they arranged for, I think there was about 6 ladies from church, and they took turns in bringing full meals 3 times a day. Not 3 times a day, 3 times a week. And what a blessing that was. And that went on until after Walt passed away. And still some of them come to see me and bring food. But it was a big help to me and my family to have them do that. Of course, I tried to tell them that they was overdoing it. And they said, let them be the judge there.
And they're still helping you today, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Still, I had to give up my driving.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't want to, but they come and pick me up, and any place I want to go, they take me.
Yeah.
And, of course, my 2 children are here, too. Of course, they're both in their 60s now, so they got old the same time I did.
Don't let Jeannie hear that. I'll edit that one out so she won't hear it.
But I got a lot to be thankful for.
Yeah.
He didn't suffer when they called to tell me he had passed away. So it was pretty much of a shock.
Yeah.
But he did receive good care where he was.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone like me, a physical therapist that works in, home health or maybe nursing homes or hospitals or whatnot? What would you say are some big things that I should not do with someone like Walt? When he had Alzheimer's, towards the end of his life, what are some of the worst things a therapist can do in your perspective?
Well, I would think maybe expect more out of them than what they were capable of doing. Although no, Dustin wasn't that way. He understood very much so.
Probably to a fault.
Well, that could be.
Yeah.
But I I can't think that we had any other physical therapist.
Yeah. Do you feel like he was under challenged in other places?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe. Now, when he was down for his physical therapy down at Westminster.
You sure you don't want some wine?
I'm sure. It isn't good, is it? You're trying to give it away.
The second glass was better than the first, Peanie.
I think there's 3 out there, so take it all.
All right. So he was getting rehab down at Westminster?
Mm-hmm. And that was when after he had his leg surgery on his knee. And, of course, the poor man had to not put any weight on it whatsoever, so he had to hop on one leg.
Oh.
And that was so difficult.
Yeah.
So difficult. But he made it. He would hop down to the dining room every day. And the therapists down there were very good, too.
Yeah.
I think you knew a couple of them, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
DJ? No.
AJ?
AJ.
Yep.
AJ.
AJ, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was a lot of my current coworkers that worked with him.
Oh, is that right?
There. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so
yeah, that's
awesome.
They helped him a lot down there.
Yeah.
As much as, they could.
Yeah. So what are some really good characteristics for therapists to have, in your opinion?
A sense of humor.
Sense of humor.
Which Dustin certainly does.
Oh, man.
And to care for the individual as a person instead of a number.
Mm.
And we didn't run into that problem whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be easy when you're seeing a lot of people to kind of forget that that's someone's dad or grandparent or brother or sister. And
well, you were very understanding there. Very much so.
Yeah.
And you were good with my family, too. Especially my daughter.
Yeah, she's tough, though. She's a tough one. I hope she listens to this.
Yeah.
So, what if you had every physical therapist, occupational therapist, or speech therapist, all those different therapies that you or Walt probably worked with at some point, if you had them in one room, what would you want them to know? What would you say to them?
That's a good one.
No pressure.
I guess just do the best you can with what you've got to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that from 2 different points of view. From my side, in terms of equipment, or facilities, or just the setup that we have as therapists. I mean, especially here in your home, you work with what you got, and
sometimes that's very little.
Yeah, right. And most of the time, all we really need is gravity, and we've always got that. So, but then from the other perspective, you mentioned this earlier of work with what you got in terms of the patient, in terms of the person in front of you, and work with the capabilities of that person, and to try and maximize those for sure.
Well, I kind of like you would push us. I mean, you didn't let us by and do nothing.
Yeah.
And I think we both felt that was needed. We wouldn't do it on our own. We needed a therapist to help us.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. We had some fun, didn't we?
We certainly did. Lots of fun. And I hope it continues, too.
Yep, it will.
And I met his very, very nice wife, too.
Yeah, we've had some good double dates, haven't we?
Fun times.
Yep, and that will continue.
Good.
So I appreciate you talking with me and just sharing your story and your perspective. And this is very valuable, whether you believe it or not, because the patients normally teach us more than anyone else in our careers. And it's great to hear your perspective from being a patient and a caregiver, because we're treating the patient, but what we're doing is impacting every single person that's involved in that person's life, in the patient's life.
Yes, it is.
I appreciate your perspective for sure.
Well, I appreciate you more than you'll ever know, because you did a lot for Walt and I.
Yeah,
an awful lot. Hope, for one thing.
We had some fun. There you have it, folks. my good friend Peanie Smith. Really appreciated having a couple glasses of wine with her. She normally drinks with me, but for some reason she didn't that night. I don't know what's up with that. I think it's because she typically prefers a Miller High Life rather than a nice cheap red wine. But anyway, very helpful conversation. Just the journey that she's been on. I mean, it's just been crazy, especially the past, 3, 4, 5 years. But her story has really helped me, especially when, I expect patients to do certain things or to do certain exercises. We have to have a realistic perspective of what life looks like for them and for the caregivers as well. And I know this is something that Amy Goyer echoed in episode 14. If you haven't listened to that, I highly recommend it. Just a caregiver perspective as well from her. But, in all honesty, our physical therapy may not be the most important thing in people's lives, which, coming from our perspective, it's so easy to see that we've got the golden ticket to health, that exercise and movement and what we're going to prescribe is the best thing for them. But in reality, that's not the case a lot of the times. Probably the best thing for Peanie when I was working with her was the home health aide that came in the evening. She did more for them than I ever could. So just remember that, especially, the young PTs out there that haven't had a lot of experience in these situations. Our interventions are powerful, but maybe not that big of a deal for the patients. Peanie also mentioned something that really struck a chord with me when she said that I gave them hope. And I never really thought about that when I was working with them. But that is something powerful that we do, especially when we come in and, we work with someone and typically, we're able to show an objective gain that, we can do a 5-time sit to stand test or a timed up and go or whatever objective measure. And, after, 3 to 4 weeks, we're typically, going to get people better at that. And that's huge because everything in their life is declining, that things are getting worse, they're getting slower, they're getting weaker, things are getting hard to do. But we can come in and show them, hey, you did this, 4 weeks ago. You got up and down from that chair 5 times. You did it in 30 seconds then, and you're doing it in 20 seconds now. Like that's pretty awesome for the patient, but then also the caregiver. So give some hope, be encouraging. Don't give this false hope that, you're going to reverse your disease or be back up and running, within a couple weeks. But we can give people hope that they can improve on their situation with hard work and consistency. And that's a very powerful message. So those are my thoughts on the episode. I want to thank Peanie again. Hopefully she'll listen to this. That is not easy to share on the internet with hundreds of people, potentially thousands of people. But she had a tough story, and she was very vulnerable and open. I really appreciate that. If you have any questions for her, just hit me up on Twitter at Dustin Jones PT or shoot me an email. You can find that through seniorrehabproject.com. And I would love, for her to come back on and answer any of the questions that you may have. I mean, she just has an abundant amount of experience in the healthcare system as a patient and a caregiver. So her perspectives are very valuable. So let's wrap this puppy up with a lyric from James Brown. He once said, "When they were dancing and singing and moving to the grooving, and just when it hit me, somebody turned around and shouted, 'Play that funky music, white boy.'" Stay funky, y'all.